What if you only needed 6 watercolor paints to create everything? Landscapes, florals, portraits, tropical water, sunrises, even skin tones. So I asked ChatGPT to recommend the perfect beginner watercolor palette. And then I tested it across as many subjects as I could. And honestly, some results surprised me. When most people start watercolor, they assume they need dozens of colors. I definitely thought that too. But a lot of professional watercolor artists actually work with a very limited palette because it teaches you how colors interact instead of relying on pre-mixed paints. So for this experiment, I used the Daniel Smith Essentials watercolor set. I split up the color swatches into warm and cool color wheels, then did additional swatches across all colors down below. First up is Hansa Yellow Light, a really clean, bright yellow that creates glowing mixes. Then moving to our cool red, Quinacridone Rose. This color carried the florals and skin tone studies. It creates gorgeous violets and soft pinks for skin undertones. Our cool blue is Phthalo Blue, one of my newfound favorites. This color pushes the versatility of the palette. It creates intense tropical water, vibrant greens, and then super deep darks. Bouncing over to our warm color wheel, our warm yellow is New Gamboge. This warmer yellow is amazing for earthy landscapes, sunlight, and natural greens. Our warm red is Pyrrole Scarlet, a powerhouse of a color. It makes the autumn paintings and skin tone mixes feel incredibly vibrant. Last but certainly not least, French Ultramarine is our warm blue. This is my most used color in the set. The granulation and depth it creates in skies, shadows is just beautiful. In my opinion, there's not a lot of colors with this much versatility. And let's fast forward to get some secondary mixes in there so you can see the orange, violet, and green from each color wheel. And then any 2 color mixes not in the color wheels will be shown below. And then I also mix all 3 colors for each wheel and put that at the center so we can see some neutral action. But the real question is, could this palette actually handle completely different painting styles and subjects? The birch tree painting was the first real test. I wanted to see if the palette could create rich, earthy landscapes without relying on convenience colors. One thing I immediately noticed is that painting limited naturally makes paintings feel more cohesive. And for this painting, I tried to stay on that warm side of the color wheel. Then I switched completely in the opposite direction. This sunrise piece tested whether the palette could feel vibrant and expressive, which I will let you be the judge of that. I swayed to the cool side of the palette for this piece, which evokes those cool lakeside morning vibes. The contrast between the soft transparent sky wash and the punchy foreground foliage makes this piece feel like it's truly glowing. Let's take a trip to my Etcher sketchbook for some fruit studies, which ended up teaching me the most about color mixing. Fruit has subtle shifts in temperature everywhere, and I bounced back and forth between the cool and warm sides of this palette frequently. You'll see the granulation come out, especially in that kiwi skin. I painted my wash of color, then splattered some clean water on top to bring up that outer texture. Side note, if you want to see a more in-depth tutorial of any of the paintings in this video, please drop me a comment and let me know, and I'd love to make that happen for you. Another little side note, and this is not exclusive to this palette only, but I had to do multiple layers of my colors to build up that vibrancy and punch up the color a bit. Now it might have something to do with the paper that I'm using. It is an Etcher Everyday Sketchbook, 100% cotton watercolor paper, but I just thought that was something worth mentioning. Now, your girl's not exactly a loose florals expert. In fact, though I've been practicing watercolor since 2012, I would still consider myself a beginner at the subject. I'm always trying to learn new styles, studying how other artists achieve their style, which is how we arrived here. On the bright side, though these look nothing like peonies, you can still see the soft washes of pinks, corals, yellows, and violets often used in floral paintings. Quinacridone Rose was the star of the show here, mixing beautifully with other colors using wet-on-wet techniques and diluting to a soft, almost pastel kind of pink. This is where the transparency of the colors really stood out. This next subject was honestly the one I was most curious about. Tropical waters usually need super intense, vibrant colors, which is where phthalo blue comes into play. Mixed with a cool yellow like Hansa Yellow Light, achieves that fresh, bright turquoise famous near the equator. And finally, portraits. Or should I say, eye and skin tone studies. This was the ultimate versatility test. Skin tones are incredibly sensitive to temperature shifts and neutrals. I swatched out some color mixes I thought would be helpful before embarking on the first eye study. This one challenged me 100%. Could I achieve both the rich warmth and complex tones of a deep skin tone and the soft color changes with a light skin tone, then everything in between? I just tackled the two extremes for the studies, then again with those other color swatches on the side to show the medium skin tones, leaning more olive, yellow, peachy, and more. For the darker skin tone, I focused more on the undertone in those first layers, before later coming back to test the depth of the color. I stayed on the warm side of the palette for this one, mixing New Gamboge, Pyrrole Scarlet, and French Ultramarine at different strengths to test out the tonality. French Ultramarine is a really granulating color, and you can use that to your advantage or not. You can kind of see that color separating from the Pyrrole Scarlet in that darker skin tone study up at the top. And again, depending on your style and the look that you're going for, you may like this effect, you may not. For the lighter skin tone, I relied heavily on the Quinacridone Rose and both yellows, only mixing in ultramarine for the shadow areas, and then I popped in that phthalo color for the eye. But overall, if this palette can handle skin tones naturally, it can probably handle almost anything. All right, editing Rachel, popping on here to give some final thoughts. I do have some notes, so I will be looking down, and you can kind of see me editing back here.
And don't mind my messy desk. Anyway, I digress. So after painting all of these completely different subjects, did ChatGPT actually recommend the perfect beginner watercolor palette? I will let you be the judge of that. I think it is an extremely versatile palette. I was able to achieve a lot more than I thought I would, honestly. And having a limited palette like that really challenged me to figure out color mixes because I rely heavily on some convenience colors like certain greens, and burnt sienna and burnt umber are two of my favorite colors. They really help neutralize any color and make really rich, deep, dark grays. Like my favorite mix is burnt sienna and ultramarine. It just makes such a pretty mix. But anyway, that is what my little heart was missing. But this palette comes pretty close. So, more importantly, I think beginner artists massively underestimate how much they can do with a few colors. This palette really helped with learning color theory faster, avoiding overwhelm, because if you have 600 colors before you, or even one of those 25 or 40 palettes before you, it can get very overwhelming just looking at all the color choices. Which one should I choose? And then you can also get very muddy mixes with all of that color choice too. So this helps to avoid that. And this palette also helps build your confidence and helps you to understand pigments. That being said, there are limitations. If you love convenience colors, like I discovered, granulating specialty paints or super unique pigments, eventually you'll probably want to expand beyond this palette. But honestly, I think learning with a palette like this first makes adding new colors later way more intentional. If you're a beginner and feeling overwhelmed by watercolors, you honestly do not need 40 different paint colors to create a beautiful artwork. And honestly, this experiment made watercolor simple again. And that's in the best way possible. If you are a professional watercolor artist that has a bunch of colors, I highly recommend going back to your roots, going back to a limited watercolor palette, and see what you can achieve with that. Again, if you guys wanted a full-length tutorial on any of the watercolor pieces that you saw in this video, please let me know. Leave a comment down below. And if you want, I can also do something like a full mixing chart, which I kind of did, but I can do it more in depth. I can do beginner exercises using this palette, or a 30 days only using this palette challenge, which I kind of already did for the past 7 days. So if you want something longer, let me know. If you guys stayed till the end, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. And that's it for me today. Until next time, stay creative, stay faithful, and stay rooted in grace. Bye, guys.